All right, I think we're live. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push 1. All right, got a confirmation from the chat. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 501. Geopolitics. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Docket and description beneath the video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage in the discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so that one of us can advance you to the panel. Having some difficulty here. Just give me a quick second. Before you get on the panel, make sure you update your Zoom client. Because if you don't update your Zoom client, you won't be able to connect. They put out an update an hour ago, so make sure you download the new update for the Zoom client before you engage in this discussion. Let me give a shout out to the people who already arrived. Doug, moderator of the year, peace to you. Mega Montana, peace. Janelle Santos, welcome to the channel. And thank you for the compliment as well. Gearsy Net, what's going on? Phantom Mute, what's going on? Anthony Lou, what's going on? All right, let me get started real quick. The link is in the chat for those who want to engage. All right. All right, first item on the docket is from space.com. Trump signs executive order to support moon mining, tap asteroid resources. We should have covered this on Monday. The water, ice, and other lunar resources that will help the United States establish a long-term human presence on the moon are there for the taking, the White House believes. President Donald Trump signed an executive order today, April 6th, establishing U.S. policy on the exploitation of off-Earth resources. The policy stresses that the current regulatory regime, notably the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, allows the use of such resources. This view has long held sway in the U.S. government circles. For example, the United States, like other major spacefaring nations, has not signed the 1979 Moon Treaty, which stipulates that non-scientific use of space resources be governed by an international regulatory framework. And in 2015, Congress passed a law explicitly allowing American companies and citizens to use moon and asteroid resources. The new executive order makes things even more official, stressing that the United States does not view space as a global commons and sees a clear path to off-Earth mining without the need for further international treaty-level agreements. The executive order, called Encouraging International Support for the Recovery and Use of Space Resources, has been in the works for about a year, a senior administration official said during a teleconference with reporters today. The order was prompted, as at least in part, by a desire to clarify the United States position as it negotiates with international partners to help advance NASA's Artemis program. For crewed lunar exploration, the official added. Artemis aims to land 2 astronauts on the moon in 2024 and to establish a sustainable human presence on and around Earth's nearest neighbor by 2028. Lunar resources, especially the water ice, thought to be plentiful on the permanently shadowed floors of polar craters, are key to Artemis' grand ambitions, NASA officials have said. The moon is not the final destination for these ambitions. By the way, Artemis is designed to help NASA and its partners learn how to support astronauts in deep space for long stretches. Lessons that will be key to putting boots on Mars, which NASA wants to do in the 2030s. As America prepares to return humans to the moon and journey on to Mars, this executive order establishes U.S. policy towards the recovery and use of space resources, such as water and certain minerals, in order to encourage the commercial development of space. Scott Pace, Deputy Assistant to the President and Executive Secretary of the U.S. National Space Council, said in a statement today. President Trump has shown considerable interest in shaping U.S. space policy. In December 2017, for example, he signed Space Policy Directive 1, which laid the groundwork for the Artemis campaign. 2 other directives have aimed to streamline commercial space regulation and the protocols for space traffic control, and Space Policy Directive 4, which the president signed in February 2019, called the creation of the Space Force the first new U.S. military branch since the Air Force was stood up in 1947. So what does this really mean? Space wars, okay? Anytime where there's resources available somewhere, you're going to have to defend those resources that you're trying to mine or you're trying to exploit. And obviously on planet Earth, you see a lot of warships, okay? Merchant ships usually don't travel alone. They usually travel with some form of security, maritime security in close proximity to it, okay? China is building out its Navy, its Blue Water Navy, for that very reason, to protect its shipping routes as well as its maritime operations, from its own waters all the way across different bodies of water, the Indian Ocean and so on and so forth, especially because they have a military base on the coast of Africa in Djibouti for that reason. But what happens when you go to space and you start talking about exploiting resources? Well, if the United States is first out, then the United States has a head start, okay? They want to make sure that they corner the market in space exploration and the exploitation of resources on different planets as well as asteroids, okay? People will tell us here at the Black Brain Trust on this channel that going to space is stupid. Black people shouldn't be worried about space. Well, yeah, you should be worried about space. The United States government is getting ready to tear up the moon, okay? They're getting ready to tear up Mars as well in a couple of years. So there's also talk about going to Jupiter, okay? Going to their moons, okay? I think they have about 26 moons over there, something like that, something to that effect, 26, 30, 35 moons over there that are bigger than the size of the Earth. They're talking about exploiting those resources up there and actually putting humans up there at one point. Not in our lifetime, 100 years from now, yes, you will see humans on one of those moons. Living up there at some point. But that's, this is the geopolitics of space. Now you're talking about exospace treaties and space wars, or Star Wars for that matter. You're going to see drones be made with laser cannons on them, drone fleets, corvettes, what they call them, corvettes, frigates, and things like that. There's going to be a whole entire industry behind this. China is on the up right now. Russia has no debt. Russia can get involved in this. In fact, Russia has been long involved in space exploration since the 1950s. Okay, maybe when you can even go back to the 1900s. Russia has been developing rockets. Okay, North Korea, as isolated as they are, have the ability to go to space now. Everybody is going to space and will at some point occupy the moon. What happens when you have too many people and too many nations in a crowded place like the moon? Okay, you're gonna have some problems. That will go far beyond domestic politics. It will actually extend out. All right, next item on the docket is from the Diplomat. The Russian aerospace, Sukhoi plans for Su-57 stealth fighter deliveries in 2020. The Russian aerospace forces will begin receiving the Su-57 this year, according to Sukhoi Corporation. I'm not going to read this whole thing because I don't think it's that important. Sukhoi Corporation aims to start deliveries of its Su-57 fighter aircraft, Russia's first purported indigenously designed and built fifth-generation stealth fighter, to the Russian aerospace forces in 2020, according to a company representative who spoke to Shepard earlier this month. Deliveries were initially scheduled to begin in late 2019, with the aerospace forces slated to take delivery of the two Su-57s in 2019 and two more in 2020. However, a December 2019 crash of the Su-57, thought to be the first serial produced fighter during a flight test, reportedly delayed the transfer of the first batch of aircraft by several months. Russian defense officials already in December 2019, however, emphasized that the first Su-57 was handed over to the aerospace forces in 2020. Large-scale works awaits us in 2020 to stabilize the aircraft industry. The head of Rostec, Sergei Chemezov, was quoted as saying on December 26 last year by TASS news agency, the first large-scale deliveries of the fifth generation Su-57 aircraft will begin. The Russian aerospace forces are currently testing 10 Su-57 prototypes, 4 of which reportedly have flown combat missions in Syria. The Su-57 conducted airstrikes for the first time in the war-torn country in early 2018. The chief of staff of the Russian Armed Forces, First Deputy Defense Minister General Valery, revealed in December 2019 that the Su-57 had undergone a second combat testing in Syria, during which all tasks planned were successfully performed. The service is also using 3 airframes for ground testing, as I explained elsewhere. All Su-57 prototypes have been fitted with a derivative of the Russian-made Saturn AL-41F1S engine. The AL-41F1, an older aircraft engine, also installed on the Sukhoi Su-35S Flanker E. It is unclear when production will shift to the more advanced Saturn Ally 30 engine. In May 2019, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that the aerospace forces will receive 76 Su-57 by 2028. A contract between the Russian Ministry of Defense and United Aircraft Corporation was signed in July 2019. Deputy Defense Minister Alexei Kiriakosh announced in June 2019 that Sukhoi Corporation is ready to mass produce the Su-57. In July, following the signing of the contract with the Minister of Defense, Russian defense industry officials revealed that serial production of the Su-57 has begun without, however, offering any details. According to the Russian media reports, the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic could prompt a reduction in the numbers of Su-57s ordered by the aerospace forces and a shift to more Su-35s and other fourth-generation fighter aircraft types. The Russian MOD has so far not publicly commented on these reports. The Russian defense industry has been developing a number of new weapons systems for the Su-57, including a new intra-fuselage hypersonic air-to-ground missile. In December 2018, a defense industry source revealed that the Su-57 may also be armed with a hypersonic air-to-surface missile with characteristics similar to that of the KH-47M2 Kinzhal air-launched ballistic missile. Yeah, so this is Russia's version of the F-35. Okay, Russia does have comparable technology to the United States military, maybe not as widely posted, but the Su-57, from all things I've read and we've read on here, is comparable to the F-35 and if not superior to the F-35 in the sense that it actually works, and the F-35 actually does not. Okay, plus it's considerably cheaper. And so because of that, you have a jet that can actually carry a hypersonic ballistic missile. So what does hypersonic mean? Really fast, right? So you're talking about something that can do Mach 20 pretty easily, if it had to. How would they deliver this thing? They're gonna deliver it on the underbelly of the plane itself, okay? I don't know if the F-35 has a comparable ammunition payload available. It can carry a considerable payload, but I don't know if it carries a hypersonic missile. The fact that the Russians tested a hypersonic missile 6 months ago and actually implemented them in January, and they're talking about strapping it to one of these Su-57s, means that this is a game changer. Okay, a hypersonic missile strapped to one of these jets, one of these fighter jets, can take out an aircraft carrier pretty easily. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised. Hey, what's going on, dude?
Yeah, you know, those hypersonic missiles, you know.
Your mic is breaking up a lot, Complex.
Sorry. Hey, Mike, can you hear me now?
Your mic is still a little bit scratchy.
Okay. All right. Give me a second. Go ahead. Just go ahead.
All right. What I was saying was that the hypersonic missile, the Kinzhal, one of those missiles can take out an aircraft carrier pretty easily. In fact, the aircraft carrier has no defense against that. It's almost a sit and duck because it's too fast and there's no weapon that can actually shoot it down, depending on what angle they attack it at. And so that becomes a problem. You have a very fast jet, a very stealth one, that can drop this payload right onto that aircraft carrier, and there's nothing that the U.S. Navy can actually do about that other than use a laser. Even if you did use a laser at that speed and at that impact, the only thing you can do is get out the way. This is very much a game changer. Now, this is non-nuclear. If it was nuclear, it'd be even more devastating that one of these planes can fly right over Canada undetected and pretty much decimate the Canadians at best. And then in a conflict like this, in a global conflict, more than likely Russia would take out all Canadian air response systems, right? So all their assets, all their planes, make sure that those planes don't get off the ground so they can't respond, because although the United States does have a considerable response system installed in Alaska, it's the Canadians that, that would be a wild card here, because you don't know what they're going to do. But this Su-57 is actually, it balances the the odds. You know, the Americans have had the F-35, and NATO has the F-35 as well now, and now you're talking about, you know, tipping the scales back. What's China gonna? What does China have in comparison to this? I think they have the F-21, if I remember correctly. How well that works, nobody knows. They're still using Russian equipment for all intents and purposes, but the F-21 as a copy, we don't know how well it works yet. All right.
My mic still sounds scratchy.
Yeah, it does.
Damn it.
All right, next item on the docket is from NBCnews.com. Trump administration slaps sanctions on Russian white supremacists. The move against the Russian imperial movement is the first time the designation has been made for a white supremacist group. Amazingly enough, they won't put sanctions on any white supremacists here in the United States, but they do make sure they put them on them abroad. Interesting. The Trump administration on Monday designated a Russian white supremacist group a foreign terrorist organization and hit its members with sanctions. The move against the Russian imperial movement is the first time the designation has been made for a white supremacist group and comes amid doubts. The administration believes extremist organizations of that type merit such sanctions. It was not immediately clear what the practical impact will be, as the group is relatively small and does not have major international reach. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and his counterterrorism coordinator, Nathan Sales, announced the step, which makes it illegal to provide the group or its identified members with any kind of material support. Those penalties can include asset freezes and travel bans and can apply to non-Americans. In addition to the group, the administration placed individual sanctions on its leaders, Stanislav Antonovich, Denis Gariv, and Nikolai Trukulov, by adding them to its list of specially designated global terrorists. These designations are unprecedented, Sales said. This is the first time the United States has ever designated white supremacist terrorists, illustrating how seriously this administration takes the threat. We are taking actions no previous administration has taken to counter this threat. The Russian imperial movement is alleged to provide paramilitary training to neo-Nazis and white supremacists in Russia and elsewhere from two camps it runs in St. Petersburg, according to U.S. officials. In 2016, it was alleged to have trained two Swedes who later carried out a series of terrorist attacks in the Swedish city of Gothenburg, including bombing a cafe and attempting to bomb a campsite housing refugees, they said. There are 69 entities on the State Department's foreign terrorist organization blacklist, but most are Islamic extremist groups or separatist movements that have engaged in violence to achieve political ends. The Al-Qaeda network and Islamic State movement, along with many of their affiliated organizations, are perhaps the best known among them, probably because they're not white. Trump and his administration has been criticized for not appearing to take the threat of white supremacy, this is spelled wrong, supremacism seriously, either overseas or domestically. Trump came under fire for not responding more forcefully to violence provoked by some neo-Nazi groups in Charlottesville, Virginia in August of 2017, and has been called out for supporting European national politicians. Monday's designations will make it easier for national security prosecutors at the Justice Department to bring terrorism-related charges against anyone who supports or provides aid to people affiliated with the Russian group. It's illegal to provide money, equipment, or even less tangible aid to people connected with the movement. Federal prosecutors routinely use the material support statute to charge people in the United States who attempt to travel to Syria to fight alongside the Islamic State. And more recently, FBI Director Chris Wray has warned Congress about white supremacists in America who have traveled to Eastern Europe to train with people who share their ideology. We are starting to see racially motivated violent extremists connecting with like-minded individuals overseas online. Certainly, Ray said at a hearing last October. And in some instances, we have seen some folks travel overseas to train. So what do we have here? So like the article said, the Trump administration refused to actually take on these white supremacists in Charlottesville, or white nationalists for that matter, far right. But when it comes to Russians, we got to, put all hands on deck. But the idea here is to make it seem like, yeah, we're doing something about white supremacy, but just not in our country, maybe somewhere else, right? We'll talk about Black identity extremists here, but we won't talk about white supremacists here. Find people on both sides, says the Tangerine Tyrant.
Can you hear me now, Mike?
No, your mic is really bad, dude.
Oh, dude. All right.
You have the new Zoom client. If you don't have the new Zoom client, you have to download it first before you even jump on the panel.
Well, I think that's the problem. I downloaded it, and I've been having problems with Zoom ever since I downloaded it.
They just updated it an hour ago. So if you haven't downloaded it an hour ago, then you don't have the latest client.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I'm gonna drop off. Then I'll come back.
All right. So yeah, the Trump administration believes, yeah, we'll start Russian white supremacists. Those are the bad guys. Our white supremacists are the good guys. David Duke, Steve Bannon, some of these other guys, Bill O'Reilly, another white supremacist in entertainment. Sean Hannity. Oh, those are good guys. Find people on both sides. That's what he says. Where were the Black conservatives? Nowhere to be found. So this is just easy for Trump. This is more sanctions on Russia. No matter which way you slice it, we're taking more actions against Russians, and we're also taking action against white supremacy. So we kill two birds in one stone. In reality, nobody here really knows who these white supremacists are. Most Russians don't speak English in that area of the region, anyways. Really, you'll hear English in places like Moscow because it's more tourist based, and the education is a lot different, right? However, we do know white supremacists here. Go to New Hampshire, go to Georgia, go to Alabama, go to West Virginia, go to Texas. Plenty of white supremacists running around down there. Okay, North Dakota, South Dakota, the Aryan Brotherhood, the Hell's Angel biker gang. Okay, many of these biker gangs are white supremacist groups. Yeah, D.E. Raptor points that out. Steve Bannon is the Secretary General of white supremacy on a global scale now. He's going around organizing these people. He is the Mike Pompeo to the white nationalist groups. Okay. He was in Brazil organizing white nationalists there, far right groups. He was in Ukraine organizing far right groups. Slovenia, Slovakia. He was in Germany. He was in the United Kingdom, if I remember correctly. Let me advance some of these people. But yet they want to go after Farrakhan for hate speech. You got a lot of hate speech in Charlottesville, Virginia. Tiki torches and AR-15s, to be exact. Somebody will not replace us, is what they say. Right? But no smoke for these people. No smoke for them. Okay? If you don't have the new Zoom client, you can't get on the panel. That's why you're going to have some issues getting onto the panel. So you're going to have to update the Zoom client. And I don't blame Trump, because Trump is held hostage in his own cabinet. Okay. His daughter is out there, twerking it up with yarmulkes on her head. Haza, haza, haza for her. Eric Trump is in New York, in a facility where it's been booby trapped with all types of surveillance, electronic surveillance. Who do we have here? We have Nagone 11. What's going on?
Hey, what's good? What you said? Haza.
It's similar to Hamina. You got Man Friday on the panel as well as Dr. D. What's going on?
What's up? Can y'all hear me?
Oh, I'm good, brother. Yourself?
I'm doing good. Just came through to support, to show some love.
Oh, really? It's a little bit of 3.0 over here, so you don't want to be affiliated with us, right? All right.
Funny.
Yeah. So anybody have
just wanted to ask
this? Man Friday on the panel as well. Yeah, man. Yeah, Dr. D, you got to mute your YouTube feed in the background. You still have the feed going in the background. Go ahead, Nagone 11.
Yeah. So what's up with this white supremacist stuff? I missed this in the news.
So the Trump administration put sanctions on Russian white supremacists.
Okay, but they don't want to put sanctions on white supremacists here, huh?
Oh no. They give them hamburgers after they kill people in the church while they're praying. Remember that?
Oh, I remember that quite well.
He was hungry, is what they said. His little belly was aching, so we gave him a hamburger. He was hungry.
Yeah, said he was hungry.
We gave him a happy meal.
So they fed him. They fed him nicely after a quick afternoon of stone cold killing.
Oh, absolutely. But they left Michael Brown in the street to die.
With his blood running cold in the streets.
Oh, yeah. Eric Gardner, were you illegally out there selling cigarettes? We're going to use this illegal chokehold on you, too, just as a response.
Yeah.
Over cigarettes. Here you have white supremacists, incel going to a church, wipe all these people, and then we buy him a hamburger. They even went to the drive-thru. He was hungry.
Yeah. Gave him a nice little meal. Yeah. I guess you get hungry after going to a black church and killing folks. And I found it kind of interesting as well, that the police officers were like, yeah, well, we felt we needed to do that. It's just craziness. Then you have Charlottesville, where you will not replace us. Jews will not replace us. And they're walking there with torches. Could you imagine if they were 100 black men doing that? They would have had the National Guard out. They would have had the naval military units out there, ready to, fire, missiles from the shores into that area. I mean,
No, former CIA linguistics officer. What's this brother's name on YouTube? Stephen. I forget his name now, man. He's on YouTube. He's a white man. He said specifically about Charlottesville. He said if those were black men out there, he said the United States military would have launched an airstrike against them. Said no way they would have let that happen. This is a white man saying this. He said specifically that they would have launched an airstrike against them. A bunch of black men with that many guns walking around that close to federal property or something like that would have took them out. They wouldn't even thought twice about it. But we know from historically speaking that Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, that the first planes used in conflict was used against unarmed black people.
It sure did. Sure was. And bombed the airfield where we had black planes, so they made sure they couldn't take off as well.
Oh yeah.
That was So that's what we're dealing with here in this country. But you have folks who have some. You have the are we sick, boss? And those folks are out there saying how good things are, which is very interesting. All right, Mike.
Yeah,
You gotta realize. Sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, D.
DE, what's up, baby?
E equals M.
What's up, Professor? How you doing, sir?
DE,
Oh.
DE. What was it? MC squared.
Hey, we gotta realize that. Well, us as black folks, we gotta realize that these guys, policemen, today's policeman is coming out of the military, which recruits white supremacists. Most of the military units, the hitmen in the military are white supremacists. I mean, those are the guys that are in the units that go out. They send out 1 or 2 guys to do a kill. When they come out, they go into the police department, and their trainers in the military or CIA or whatever alphabet you want to call them, are in the State Department. And the State Department is who trains the police departments nowadays. They train. The other day, you guys were talking about police departments that we're talking about police departments. And one of the things about the police departments in the U.S. is that the State Department comes down. They send people down to police department to tell them how they can operate, what they can. They, in a sense, conduct federal. They work on the federal law in the state. Every state, the police department is trained by these people, and they teach them how to build cases, how to operate the equipment. That's why they get the equipment from the military.
1033 program.
So they teach them. So when they come after you, they go after, say, if there was a white supremacist group, these guys go scot-free. If you get a black guy with a weapon walking around the neighborhood, now he's going to get charged on the federal law, because the federal law statute allow you to get conspiracy charges, which give you automatic time with no parole. And if the federal government don't want you, then they turn you over to the state. You know, if you're not a big enough fish, so to speak, then they turn you over to the state, and the state, try you. But that's how it works. They teach the police department federal law when they're in service, not when they're going through basic training. When they're in service, when they wearing the badge already, they teach them federal law so that they can execute federal law at a local level.
You know what's interesting is this guy's insignia right here. I didn't even notice this. It's no different than the flag for the Confederate flag. Not that much different.
Nope.
I mean, you see what's going on.
When you have from the U.S. Look,
you have black.
If you remember, the South Africans came here. Well, you were talking about it last week, to learn how to implement apartheid.
Yeah.
Hitler.
But
when they asked Hitler, how did he fashioned him after the U.S.
Yeah. And I think what I want to say is you have black people who are in special forces and so forth who know what's going on. You hear some of these brothers actually speak on some of this. We've got some fairly well-trained brothers as well in the military. Let's keep that. Let's keep that a buck as well. But brothers who are in the military know this is going on. They know it. They see it. They're trying to drum out some of these white supremacists that they find. So if they find out that you are, they're moving you out. If people start complaining, but there are a lot in there. They're just a lot in there, man.
Well, a lot of them were becoming really bold. They were just coming right out and right out in the open, and they don't want them operating like that.
No, that's why they're coming down on them. That's why they're cutting back to the fat meat, because they're saying that this is a problem. It's a national security. It's really a national security issue. And
if you have 100 million legally registered firearms in this country and 90% of them are owned by white males, I don't know, man. You might. I think that in itself is a national security issue, not even just the mentality.
Yeah, facts. I see people talking about Steve Bannon here in the chat, and Steve Bannon. The thing that bothers me about him is he's a very bright guy. This is a smart dude. Mm-hmm. But his game is real evil. That's what makes him dangerous, because this guy is smart. He's a smart guy. He understands a lot, and see what he wants is he wants these crazed, the underbelly white boys to get in powers of, to get in control of what's going on here in this country, instead of being the elites. His battle with the low end white boy who's trying to come in here and flip things over. These ultra racists, they're not part of the super elite class. The elites have a slightly different game, and he's trying to overturn that at a level. And that's what makes him such a dangerous man.
Well, they started pushing out the KKK and start implementing a more radical program under the first black president. What do they call it? Clinton. Under Clinton, when they started really on Reagan, and was in charge of that program with the drugs and all that, and then it started evolving into a bigger plan.
Well, it really started under the Nixon administration, and he actually admitted, John Ehrlichman and them, who was part of the president's staff, who really sat down and said, "Listen, targeted black people, for heroin and all that, because and we targeted them because of their political, there's this whole thing that people have missed. To a large extent, it's politics. They were afraid of how the 60s had really moved around and started to really, black people were mobilizing and so forth. And things could really change here. And, they targeted the black community for drugs, and said you were involved with all this heroin and stuff like that. And then that wasn't really the case, though they pushed a lot of drugs into your community. And then they tried to, scapegoat you for that, and then instituted mass incarceration. They really started putting a lot of black men in jail. And this was to break your community down. I mean, this orchestrated move.
You're old enough to remember that you had upper crust, what I would call upper crust, middle class Caucasian kids going to college that started joining and revolution, really making the fight for civil rights more revolutionary. They guys started picking up arms and start really shooting and blowing up stuff.
Well, you had the Symbionese. If you remember the Symbionese Liberation Army, the SLA.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. They started. That's why they went on to
Patty Hearst's daughter.
Kent State.
I mean, Patty Hearst was the daughter of the Hearst.
Family,
media
empire.
Yeah, and then they got her in there, and she was working with brothers and all that. It was a very, there was a lot of radical things going on. They also targeted the hippie community as well, because they thought the hippies and the Negroes were a problem. So this was an orchestrated attack. And
there were people.
I just want to finish up. And if you want to talk to Patty Hearst today, who's still alive, if you hear now, I was brainwashed, whatever, and she totally tried to disavow herself of what she was doing back then. But that's what was going on. And so your point about how they were getting radicalized and some were starting to work with black folks and so forth, that's absolutely correct.
Right. They were about to do a revolution in this country. I'm serious. And the wealthy Caucasians and the people who run the country couldn't allow that. So they killed a lot of them, and then they put them in really. That's how you start seeing $1 million salaries for the average, Wall Streeter and people with technology and all that. That's what all of that didn't happen by accident. That was put in place to take these people out of that mindset and give them all the money that they want, so they can live this lavish lifestyle and forget about their radical views.
Let's go to
Eric Ingram. You my dog.
yeah, let's go
Oh,
to
you my dog.
let's go to Dr. D, and let's go to Man Friday, then we'll go to Jay. You have anything you want to add to the discussion?
Oh no, I was just listening. I was just listening to everything. Sorry, I was taking care of something else.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Man Friday.
Okay. Yeah, greetings, Mike, Nagon,
Yes,
and
sir.
everyone, and the rest of the panelists. I had a question. I was
know.
wondering, is the Trump, yeah, didn't the US administration have some dealings with the far right when there was that Crimea war occupation between over the Crimea? Isn't that something that happened? Do you know anything about that?
There were far right groups called the Sloboda. It's called the Sloboda group. I know what you're talking about. So those were in the west part of Ukraine. They were in Kiev.
That's it. That's right.
Right. So what you're talking about, they were fighting the separatists in the east, the Russian speaking population of the east, in the Donbass and Luhansk. And so go ahead.
So then this is what I thought. So then for Trump now to supposedly be against far right groups when he had nothing to say about what was happening in the Ukraine, because I understood that many of the Ukraine nationalists were extreme right wing groups, and they were being supported by the yeah. Isn't that was the case? Am I lying?
Yeah.
No, they were right, and they were actually being funded by Western bank investors.
All right.
Like some of the same ones who fund Black Lives Matter, but you didn't hear that from me though.
There was a sorry. Go ahead, Noel.
But also I want to say that's where Bannon went to actually start to ramp up some of his activities over there in Europe and Eastern Europe. He was over there as well.
I heard there was a mix up with Hillary Clinton as well. She was supposed to be making cash payments or something. I remember this stuff about 5-6 years ago, hearing about it, but my mind has gone a bit.
They are ruthless people. They used to have RT used to have the videos on YouTube until YouTube removed them, but they are ruthless, man.
Sure did.
They threw a pregnant woman down a flight of stairs, man. This is on video. They locked the building and then set it on fire and let those people burn in. I mean, these people are ruthless.
Yeah.
And they're doing this to people who look just like them. So you imagine what they'll do to Black people if they ever come across them. When I went to South Africa last month, I ran into a brother who was actually teaching English in St. Petersburg. And he told
Russia.
me, yes, he told me specifically, he said some of those far right groups are nasty out there. He had to be careful where he walked because him being out there by himself, that's
what they told me. I hear that a lot. That in Russia, the Africans who went over there to study and stuff like they have to be extremely careful when they're in Russia because they
actually burnt a Black dormitory over there. They burnt down a Black dormitory, tried to burn down these students who were studying. When I went to I knew a guy, his name is Vadim, and he I think he was part of the Russian family, if you know what I'm talking about over there as well. But I was a broker. I had some nice money on me, so I paid him to like body cover me, and it seemed like he was very well known in the clubs and everything else like that. So people didn't even look at me sideways. They may have wanted to, but apparently this guy was so well connected that they didn't want to mess with him. And so he said, "You won't have any problems with me," and all that, and I didn't have any issues. But I would say if you are a Black person and you're over there in Russia now, if you don't have some people, really, front and rolling with you, you're gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a problem.
Let's go to Jay. You have anything you want to add to the panel, brother?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, guys. I just Googled this organization that was recently designated a terrorist organization in Russia. Yeah. And I see that they've had several members die in Libya. So this could be the reason.
He said they died in Libya.
Yeah, fighting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've been known to have been in
Tests.
yeah, they've been known to have been in Syria as well. So
Well, Mike maybe can attest to this as well, but Russia and many Russians in Black Africa actually, forget about going over to Russia, but they actually are looked upon somewhat favorably because they played a big role in maybe having some of these countries gain their freedom and having some strong military backup and military attaches and so forth from Russia who come into those countries, help them fight. You know,
Yeah,
the
there's
government.
a few presidents as well who have married Russian women. Former president of Angola, I believe, is one of them.
So they actually have, believe it or not, somewhat of a you know, they're not a despised or disliked people there. They are, in fact, in some respects, kind of favored amongst white people, if you will. So and they have a long history. They have a long history back from the Soviet Union days. So their history is long and distinguished.
yeah,
Actually, I read this book recently called The Battle of Adwa, about the first Italo-Ethiopic War, and I didn't realize that Russia provided a lot of support for Ethiopia because they're both Orthodox countries.
They knocked them out the box, especially right before during the First World War, and General Chiano and all these guys, they got embarrassed terribly. Many of those guys were using Russian weapons. They got embarrassed terribly by them and faced a force of 100,000 Eritreans, and they ran their ass out of there. That's why Mussolini, when he had the first chance he had, when he started to make his move the Second World War to come back and start to gain empire back again, that was the first place he attacked. You know, that truly was the beginning of the Second World War, though many people didn't want to leave it, but that was because of that terrible loss that those guys had back in 1914 or 1913 back then. It was very much so, and the Russians definitely backed them up. So that was very accurate, very accurate.
I'm interested to get your opinion, Mike, and the panelists, about the relationship between Trump and Putin, because some parts of the media present as being antagonistic, and some present as being complementary. To me, they both seem to be like proud white guys, and they kind of like relate to each other on that level. So what do you think?
They're both alpha males. Out of the gate, they're both alpha males. So Trump recognizes that in Putin, and Putin is saying that's somebody I can actually do business with over there. Now, the media tries to spin is that there's some kind of kissy relationship between the two of them, but that's not there. Now, has Trump gotten, because Trump doesn't have credit in America, he has to get his financing from somewhere else, and that comes from China, that comes from Russia and other Eastern European states. And so a lot of his Trump towers and golf courses and stuff like that comes from that foreign investment, because he has no credit in America. He's gone bankrupt twice. So
I see.
Or more than twice. But the problem is that the media tries to spin it like he's in bed with Putin, but in reality, it's not Putin he's in bed with. It's the Russian oligarchs who fund some of his his operations in terms of business. And so Trump owes a lot of money to a lot of people.
And let me add a little more context to that. Putin, apparently he thought that also kind of Trump was was an alpha male and kind of running things. But then when he started seeing Trump really take a lot of heat over the Mueller investigation and what's going on in Russia and it kind of were punking him a little bit, Putin kind of looked at Trump in a sense of like, well, maybe he ain't all what we kind of think he is, and then we laid some more sanctions down on them because of some of the moves they were making over there in Syria and so forth. And I think Putin started looking at this guy like, you're kind of like a puppet more so than anything else. So you may not be that Iron Man that I kind of thought you were, like me, putting on the Sambo gi and and choking dudes out and all that with my black belt on. You ain't really rolling like that. So I think as far as that relationship is concerned, and looking at Putin as Putin looking at Trump as if he's this real strong ally of his at this stage of the game, and he's kind of making his own decisions. I don't believe he feels that way at this stage. I think something changed.
Yeah.
I think it's all about money and power. No matter what president gets in office, Obama had his own strategy. The Bushes had their strategy. You know, they were oil magnates before he even became president, and their daddy was head of the CIA. So it's all about money and power. That's just my objective. Every president gets in there and creates laws, so when they get out, they can also get on a board and an advisory board and say, hey, well, if I know you guys and I create a company and say, look, I'm gonna pass these tariffs and pass this money to get you these $500 million. When I get out of office, I want you to put me on the board and you could pay me $2 million a year. So that's just my opinion.
That's plausible.
That goes on that's been going on for many years. I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that's plausible, but the problem is Trump's in his 70s, man. By the time he gets out of office, he'll be well into his 80s. So I don't know if that really works for Trump, because I mean, at the rate that he's going right now, he's pretty healthy, but he's in no position to be, waiting to come out of office and be on anybody's board. I mean, his time is very limited within this country. So
what is he, like 73, right?
He's 70, 74 or something like that.
Somebody Google up his age. Somebody Google it.
Bernie Sanders is 77. So what I'm saying here is these guys are all in their 70s. They're not really.
Yeah, these ain't young guys.
Yeah, they're not right. They're not.
Trump is 73.
Yeah, they're no spring chicken, right? They're not going to be like in their 40s, 50s, living it up. This guy is at the end of his rope, in more ways than one. So I don't know if that really applies to Trump. You got to remember that he's an accidental president. He didn't have any sort of cabinet designed in the event that he was to win the election, right? The presidential race. When he won,
right. He didn't think he was going to win.
Yeah,
and he only got 46% of the vote.
Right.
So this is a guy who's come in here with without really a mandate.
Yeah.
Not with 46% of the vote.
Yeah.
That's supposed to win. So
I remember that night when they said he won. He like, y'all actually believe this shit? He was like, I actually won.
Yeah.
His wife started crying. She was like, "What the fuck are we gonna do now?" She was scared. Literally, man.
Nobody thought nobody was buying it, and they were like, "I can't believe this. He actually won, and he spent his own money."
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't spend on money, but spent the majority of. He spent less money than Hillary, and then they were like, "Hey, Donald Trump is the president." Like, like really? Yeah. Like you said, his wife is like, "What we gonna do now? You lied to these people. What the fuck we gonna do?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
let me knock out the article real quick. This one is from Reuters.com. Trump says China-centric WHO really blew it on coronavirus. U.S. President Donald Trump sharply criticized the World Health Organization on Tuesday, accusing it of being too focused on China and issuing bad advice during the new coronavirus outbreaks, and saying he would put a hold on U.S. funding for the agency. He's talking about putting sanctions on them. The WHO really blew it, Trump said in a Twitter post. For some reason, funded largely by the United States, yet very China-centric. We will be giving that a good look. Fortunately, I rejected their advice on keeping our borders open to China early on. Why did they give us such a faulty recommendation? Trump repeated the accusations against the UN Health Organization at a White House news briefing later on Tuesday. They called it wrong. They missed it. They missed the call. The president said, and we're going to put a hold on money spent to the WHO. We're going to put a very powerful hold on it, and we're going to see. The UN spokesman, Stephanie Dujarric, rejected the criticism of the WHO, which is led by Director General Tedros Adhanom. For the Secretary General, it is clear that WHO, under the leadership of Dr. Tedros, has done tremendous work on COVID in supporting countries with millions of pieces of equipment being shipped out, on helping countries with training on providing global guidelines, WHO is showing the strength of the international health system, he told reporters. So, actually, let me read this one part. Dujeric added that the WHO has also recently done tremendous work in putting its staff on its front lines to successfully fight Ebola, an infectious and often fatal disease in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The WHO did not respond to a Reuters request for a comment on Trump's remarks. Trump wants to cut funding to an organization that's supposed to be helping them. Good luck to him.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
about last couple of days, I've received some WhatsApp messages about the WHO in Congo, and I understand that the Congo government just received $47 million to start, I think, these vaccine tests or something like that in the Congo.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and people are very alarmed about that because, you know, Africa as a whole doesn't have as much COVID-19 cases as they do in other parts of Europe, you know. But,
well, you know, that's kind of interesting that you just bring that up. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Because when you finish,
no, go ahead. I was gonna. That's it.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting that you bring it up. They don't have many cases. I was listening to a Nigerian doctor, and they were talking about why they didn't have a lot of cases in Africa, and people were thinking, well, it's because a lot of people haven't really traveled there. But what they're saying is that many nations in Africa have had experience with pandemics before, Ebola and so forth. And they've learned, you know, how to spray down the city blocks and stuff like this with various types of, you know, almost Clorox solution type water and stuff like that to clean, the streets and so forth, and even wash people down with some of this kind of stuff, and really taking preventative measures so this doesn't have a nutrient medium in which to grow on, because they've had experience with this before. I didn't really think about that until, you know, this doctor started to speak on this, and I was it started to make sense to me, because they've had, you know, you remember the Ebola virus and all that. That was, you know, with flesh-eating viruses, and these, I mean, some of these viruses that people would catch in these areas, which would basically, not only was it a death sentence, but you died a horrible death.
It's terrible, man. Terrible.
I mean, died horribly.
Well, the thing is, when I was in Africa, and there's an article that actually pointed to this a couple weeks ago, the place was impeccably clean. Everything was clean. So they had these public sinks set up, public fountains and stuff like that set up, so that you can wash your hands and stuff like that and not actually be walking around dirty. I told you when I went over there, although the women were in poverty, they were extremely clean. Extremely clean. You didn't see any dirt. No, you know, I know a lot of people say, oh, you know, you go over there for dirty foot women, but none of those women had dirty feet, right? I see more women in our community with dirty feet here in America than I did over there. And so I find it interesting.
Yeah, big crusty feet.
Pterodactyl toes.
Hey, fellas, I'm gonna step off for a second. If y'all back on, I'll get back on with you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And so the cleanliness of the environment actually prevents a lot of that stuff. When I was at the Rwandan the Kigali airport, I mean, they clean that thing every 90 minutes. You see this Zamboni machine come out there and just completely clean the floors. Even if there's nothing going on, they're out there cleaning the floors. There's somebody out there scrubbing something. It's something you have to see for yourself. You don't see that in America like that. You don't see that.
And that's what this doctor was more or less saying, and said that they've kind of upped that a bit more as well, and that's why you're seeing you're not seeing that much of it, and it's just how they go about it, because they understand these types of pandemics that hit, especially in the city, so they try to keep that cleaner. And then, you know, a lot of people are kind of somewhat separated in the countrysides, out in the in the more rural areas, so it's a little harder for them to kind of get it. But the key thing of it is that in the areas where there are more people, where there's more profusion of people, that the amount of cleaning, the amount of cleaning agents and so forth to keep an environment as sterile as possible has been initiated, and that's what's kept that situation down a lot there. And I didn't think about that. I myself didn't really think about it. When I was in Rwanda and so forth, I thought it was very clean over there as well. And people were very clean and neat, and people smelled good. They didn't smell bad either. So, that was my experience, very limited, but that's what these guys were saying. That's what this doctor was talking about, that they've had experience with this.
Right,
So that's
issue.
why.
Gentlemen, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right
Yes,
quick?
sir.
Okay, I put a PDF link here in the chat,
Okay.
and it's about President Bush Jr.'s 2005 pandemic influenza strategy. And it's a full document showing that what he was talking about is just right here, what we're talking about right now, about pandemics, how to avoid it, how if, people who have a certain illness that is a pandemic, when they come into the country, how to, how to mitigate the fallout from it. How to get people quarantined, how to get people tested, how to get, antiviral drugs to the people that are infected, if that, to see if it works, as a testing vaccine, to cure people of the ailments and all this type of stuff. And this is back in 2005. And what happened was, after his administration, this plan was allowed to languish to the point where it was set into the dustbin of obsolescence.
Well,
Yeah.
the people who were supposed to implement the plan were all fired. You guys remember that?
And this is from 2005, brothers. You hear me?
This
From
2005,
15 years ago.
Yeah, I know, but a couple of years ago, all the people who were supposed to implement this plan were fired.
Break that down one more again. Listen, the situation was here on this one. Oh, DE, you dead on that motherfucker. You see, they closed the Office of Pandemics with this administration, closed the Office of Pandemics down, basically closed it, shut it down, really. And then started to cut back on the CDC and started to pull dollars back. And then when the shit started to hit, and they asked Trump, said, Trump, what's up? I didn't know we closed it. You closed it? I didn't know anything about it. Hold on a second. This is your administration. I mean, these guys were that stupid. They knocked those guys out the box. But DE said, it was right on the money. It's exactly what happened. And that's why we had a very poor response to this, because there were people who knew about this before and weren't in place to make moves.
Well, they planned.
That was the big issue. Go ahead. Say that again.
They planned in 2017, I believe 2018. I have an article on it where they planned like multi-billion-dollar cuts to CDC and to HHS. The people who deal with this type of shit, deal with these type of viruses and these pandemic situations and whatnot. I'm talking about like $20 billion out from CDC, like $15 billion away from HHS. I mean, these are our health, these are our scientists, these are our health scientists, these are pandemic disease scientists that can give the best advice to the president, but yet still these are government agencies. I mean, CDC and HHS.
That's the ill shit about this. That's the thing that makes this thing so ill, man.
Yeah, man. It's
that these guys actually literally drop the ball like that. I mean, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. It's just absolutely insane.
You don't do this shit by accident, man. You got to plan this shit. You got to plan. When you talking about taking away $30 billion, $20 billion from your government agencies, from your scientists, and Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci's catching all kind of hell. He needs extra security wherever he goes. Bodyguards.
Yeah, that's a given.
Well, Dr. Fauci, he's one of the only. Remember, he was big. I remember him back when the AIDS epidemic was starting to hit, and he was kind of the go-to guy. And that's why he's kind of the go-to guy right now, because he's the only one who, since they cut the office back, Office of Pandemic shut it down, which is crazy. And the pandemic's here. But he's one of the more competent people out here who has seen these pandemics before, has been through it, with the whole SARS and all that, AIDS before.
Yeah.
This is a very, very knowledgeable guy.
Yeah.
And he's being kind to the president. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying he was familiar with the Ebola virus too.
Oh, he was familiar with all that. Although this guy's sharp. This guy's sharp as a Wilkinson's blade. This guy's sharp. He's exceedingly sharp. These were people who were talking about this kind of stuff before. But if you don't have an office in place and they shut it down, the Raptor dead on it, talking about that earlier. And that's one of the things I've had the biggest issue with this idiot doing that. The wrong guy, the wrong people were in place on this, bro. The wrong people were in place.
Oh, yeah.
Wrong guys in place, man. Wrong guys in place.
I mean, you saw what happened to the captain, right? On that got fired from his position on the aircraft carrier.
Yeah. Let me get to the article. Article.
Sure.
All right. This is from the AirForceTimes.com. Air Force botched building its new air base in Africa. All right.
Wow.
Construction of the Air Force's Nigerian Air Base 201 might have violated federal law and skirted security standards, resulting in increased risk for troops operating at the remote post, according to a new report released by the Pentagon's Inspector General. The $100 million air hub is located in the Agadez region of Nigeria. It was designed for use by C-17 cargo aircraft and armed drones that previously operated out of Nigeria's capital, Niamey. But completion of the airfield and base camp was delayed by almost 3 years and plagued by mismanagement, according to the DoD IG report. Thorough site surveys were not performed early on, causing resource problems. And the airbase was not designed in accordance with Defense Department safety and security requirements, the report stated, citing problems with the aircraft rescue and firefighting station, base perimeter fence, and airfield lighting. A few procedural missteps occurred in an effort to build a functional airbase in a very remote area under very austere conditions, said U.S. Africa Command spokesman, Air Force Colonel Chris Carnes, in an email. The construction of Nigerian Air Base 201 provides a valued capability to address and monitor the deteriorating security situation in the Sahel. The DoD IG report called for a review and potential investigation into why the Air Force might have violated a federal law known as the Anti-Deficiency Act by purchasing 12 guard towers costing roughly $3.7 million using procurement funds instead of military construction funds. Procurement funds are used to finance equipment, while the military construction budget is designed to pay for property construction and requires congressional notification. Somebody got paid big time off of this.
Yep.
The Air Force.
100%.
The Air Force also bypassed Congress when it split the construction requirement for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, which is ISR, operations into 6 operations and maintenance projects added up to $5.4 million. Air Force officials told the DoD IG this was done to meet an urgent timeline. However, all of the projects were known, and each project on its own would not result in a complete and usable facility, which means the projects should have been combined and reported to Congress, the DoD IG wrote. Carnes maintained that no laws were broken during the construction process, and though some mistakes were made, procedures will be tightened up. There were also an urgent need to build the airbase, Carnes said, citing the growth of Islamic extremism in the region. 4 U.S. troops were killed during an ambush by ISIS-linked militants in Niger nearly 3 years ago. Not all of the construction at the airbase 201 was completed before operations began. The Air Force approved temporary waivers for June 2019 to allow drone operations at the facility, which increased the safety risk for personnel there. The Air Force accepted a base perimeter fence constructed by a contractor, even though the infrastructure did not meet the combatant commands anti-terrorism standards in Africa. The report said, but the paragraphs elaborating on those problems and whether they have been corrected or granted a waiver were redacted in the report, in the public report. The 724th Expeditionary Air Force Squadron Commander at Air Base 201 and Military Construction Program Manager did not have the authority to accept that risk. They also never asked AFRICOM for a waiver, meaning the command was not fully aware of the security risk at the Air Base 201. The report reads, the firefighting facility at the base was not strategically placed to airmen, so airmen could meet emergency response times for the entire airbase. And solar lighting purchase for the airfield is also not well suited for uninterrupted visual airfield lights, because Nigeria experiences sandstorms, and in heavy rain season, that will impede solar panel charging. Some of these issues arose after Airbase 201's classification was changed in September 2015 from a temporarily contingency location to a cooperative security location, meaning it's planned to be enduring base lasting up to a decade. As a result of these problems, the airfield and base camp needed to support the drone mission. There was delayed by almost 3 years, finally finishing in spring 2019. In addition, the problems that we identified related to the aircraft, rescuing and firefighting facility, and airfield lights could lead to increased risk in safety and security, the report adds. Furthermore, the construction of the infrastructure necessary to support the ISR mission, such as munitions storage and handling areas, has not been completed. Though waivers were granted, operating without the infrastructure increases the safety risk for troops assigned to a Airbase 201. AFRICOM and the Air Force pushed back against the report, citing challenges to building in the Sahara Desert and the changing operational requirements throughout the construction project. AFRICOM submitted multiple requests for the Contingency Construction Authority in Nigeria beginning in 2013 to assist the process according to the cards. So somebody got away with millions of bucks.
Yeah, indeed.
So some money pit, you know. They just at this point the US has got enough money and machinery and men. It can just afford to just give them to whoever it chooses. To me, this article just seems like it's just basically asking for more money to say that the project went wrong, but they've got an inexhaustible amount of money, the US, so they'll just throw more money at it.
Well, you know what? You know what? That's not exactly true, because if you think about it, the currency that the U.S. uses, fiat currency, it's not backed by anything but debt, particularly to China.
Well,
has a lot of greenbacks as their reserve currency. If China decides to cash out, the U.S. economy will plummet. The U.S. economy now, as far as debt is concerned, people outside of the States, it's over $14 trillion, man.
Well, what he's referring to in this context is that the United States government does not have a whole lot of money to just throw at everything, right? The F-35, the F-22, the Zimmerwalt class 34 warships that were supposed to be built and only 4 of them were built. Billions of dollars are lost from that. And we also see aircraft carriers with elevators that don't work, can't get your munitions on board on the flight deck. There's a whole litany of expenditures that should not be failed. That wouldn't happen in Russia, right? In Russia or China, if you start messing with someone's money, you get a bullet in the back of your head. That's just pretty much how they do business. Out here, man, the money's missing, and that's just the end of it. And we'll find out a way to procure more funds later on. But that's part of the military's issue, right? There's really no reason for them to be there, right? The idea that we have to fight Islamists which is a stupid term.
It's ridiculous.
And Islamists in Africa, they have the African Union. You have three or four military powers on the continent of Africa. You have Egypt in the north, you have Nigeria in the west, you have South Africa in the south. There's no real reason as to why you have to be over there building air bases to fight a ideology that you're not willing to fight in your own country with people who look just like you.
Mike,
You see what they
Mike,
did. You see what they did to Gaddafi, right? When Gaddafi was talking about boldly and publicly that he was going to go to the AU to talk about the gold dinar. See how quickly they got at him, right?
So the problem here is that somebody wanted to. Some people, I shouldn't say, this wasn't one person. This seemed to be like 4 or 5 different people who saw opportunity to make a few million really quick. So they got the job divided up so that instead of going and saying, hey, we need 15 billion to do this, we got 15 people with 1 billion because 1 billion doesn't need congressional approval. And that's what the people did. So, they just went in, stole the money, built the structure. They say, well, we're going to build a structure, and we built our structure. We fulfilled our part of the deal. It wasn't in the location where it's supposed to be, but we fulfilled our part of the deal. The other guy came in, he did his little thing, got his money, and left. That's the way it works. When you have money in your budget that you have to spend, I don't know, no one know about this. When you're in the military and you come to the end of your fiscal year, I've seen it wherever base I went to had a few million, I mean, maybe 20, 30 million in their budget. And they had a couple of months to spend it. So what did we do? We flew airplanes like there's no tomorrow. We had picnics and all kinds of nice things happening on the base for the military people. You know what I'm saying? If you're on board ship, they had barbecue, they pulled out, everything that you can. But these guys just figured out, hey, the military's got this money laying around, we need it. It might be some congressman.
Yeah, you need new toilet seats and new hammers. $100 hammer.
Facts.
So that's the way I look at this thing. From what I'm seeing, that's what it read to me.
well, I'm sure they know that there's enough. The money can be replaced. I think what I'm getting to is the fact that whatever happens, this project is going to get completed. It's the African Command is not going to stop, and they've got their reasons for being in there. We're thinking that, or the reason they're giving us is that they're going to be fighting Al Qaeda and terrorists. But I noticed since this COVID-19, all of this terrorism talk has kind of stopped. I don't know what's happened to Al Qaeda and all these different things. We're not hearing anything about them.
It's all a crock, perpetual war.
Right. Exactly.
They're making money. It's bull.
Exactly.
Hey, look,
Exactly.
one of the things that you didn't see here, they didn't say it in the article, but they expected Hillary to be elected president. And this thing started on her watch. And if she was to be president, you would be hearing about this right now. You got to go back and look at history, bro.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of this thing going on.
I agree because I mean, if Hillary would have gotten in office, I think we would have a whole lot more problems with Putin than we already have now.
Oh yeah.
I actually do agree with that quite a bit because I think Putin and those guys, they didn't like Hillary.
No, they didn't like her at all.
They definitely wanted to kind of jimmy with our with our elections and all that. Mike and I have gone back and forth with this behind the scenes about the role that Russia actually actually did play. So I don't as far as what really happened. But to make a long story short, the Russians definitely did not I mean, they thought Hillary was going to be in here, but they weren't liking the fact that she would, that she was going to be elected president. They weren't liking that. They knew that they had somebody who was going to be quite antagonistic towards them. And Putin definitely does not like Hillary. He was definitely not looking forward to that.
Check this out. I saw a video, right? From like I guess this was probably like 2018, 2019, where they were showing Russian agents in New York City, in the NYC, passing off documentation when they go downstairs into the subway, when they're walking along the street, 3, 4, 5 of them at a time. That woman Bettina who got with the NRA and shit.
Yeah.
Agent too.
Yeah.
She got caught.
Got caught in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, bro, with a burner phone and shit.
Allegedly, she's an agent.
I believe that she is. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, there's no evidence to support that she was working on behalf of the Russian government, because the Russian government doesn't even align with her views.
Well, there's a lot of funky stuff going behind closed doors that really went on with this. Because as I told you, I was going with the whole Putin files thing and just listening to a lot of people that were going in on that, and they seem to they feel they've had enough evidence to support that she was the burner phone and all that kind of stuff she was playing with, and how they were able to connect her to certain groups that were in Russia. But it's hard to say, man, spy versus spy and all that.
Well, if her job was to bring the NRA to Russia, the Russian government was not going to allow your average. I mean, you can't buy guns in Russia like that legally. They don't have a Second Amendment like the United States does.
True.
And so what she was trying to do was create a Second Amendment in Russia, and that was not going to work. They weren't going to allow that to happen. So the idea that she was this Russian spy and she was just spying on people, spying on the U.S. for the Russian state, there's no evidence to support that.
Well, we when we start to look deeper into that, when I started listening to what some other people had to say, we don't really know exactly what her real role was. But I'm not going to debate that right now, because I think this rabbit hole is a deep one, and we got to look at what we're doing on the other side as well. So I'm just going to kind of leave that be for right now. But that's a deep conversation. We can have a whole live stream on that alone.
Yeah. Let me go to this next article, and let me give a shout out to RWP in the chat. Mrs. Evolving, she said Trump said he's a businessman and he didn't see why people, scientists and researchers, should be standing around doing nothing. Trump said when he needs them, he'll call them. So
he's a fucking idiot. He's an idiot. He's an idiot. You have to have your team ready to go, even because you don't know what can happen. You got to have your people in place who can sit there and give you an early warning, regardless. Who is this idiot determining when he'll see something? This guy's a moron.
He wanted to rehire them through Robin Half. Robin Half staffing group.
Have you all been keeping tabs on what's happening in New York City?
What about it?
What about
listen, there are a lot of people who have died there from COVID-19, where bodies are being collected, and they're being stashed in refrigerated trucks.
Yeah.
To keep the bodies from rotting before they can cremate them, most likely. But it's really the COVID-19 hit New York City really hard. The 5 boroughs.
Yeah, let me go to this next article. This one is from the aviationgeek.club.com. Former Argentine A4 pilots remember the controversial strike they undertook on Royal Navy aircraft carrier HMS Invincible during the Falklands War.
Yeah.
Let me so.
Go ahead, Mike.
In 1982, the backbone of the Argentine combat aviation, both in the Air Force and the Navy, was formed by 3 batches of Douglas A4 Skyhawks, with a A4B and C of the Air Force and the A4Qs of the Navy. Despite their age being a model almost 30 years old at the time of the war and lacking protection, they took on the overwhelming struggle to fight the British task force that opposed the Argentine forces on the on the Falkland Islands The Skyhawks were responsible for inflicting the greatest damage upon the Royal Navy, sinking HMS Coventry, Ardent, Antelope, RFA Sir Galahad, and LCU F4, while damaging many other ships and striking ground targets. According to the Santiago Rivas book, Skyhawks over the South Atlantic, Argentine Skyhawks in the Malvinas and Falklands War, the A4 Skyhawks from the Argentine Air Forces Esquadron 1 Aeromobile even attempted to strike a HMS Invincible aircraft carrier on May 3rd, 1982. Coded mission OF 1268, the strike on the HMS Invincible saw Premier Tenentes Jose Vasquez and Ernesto or Eureka volunteering to take part, and they selected PTs Omar Castillo and Alferez Gerardo as Isaac as their wingmen. Paridi was to serve as a reserve. The formation was codenamed Zonda, and each aircraft was armed with 3 BRP 250 bombs. In front of them was Section Ala, including I don't know why they designed a website with a black background. What a stupid fucking design. Including Super Internards 3A202 piloted by Captain D. Corbetta. Okay. This is a picture of the aircraft. This is an A4. I'm not sure if DE Raptor's ever flown one of these before.
Wow, nice jet.
Yeah, it's nice jet. I saw this one.
That was a Navy airplane. That was built specifically for the Navy.
Yeah. That's a U.S. Navy aircraft too. You can see that star there, that emblem.
Well, that's an example. It's an example of it.
Okay.
That airplane was built specifically for the Navy. It was an attack. It was an attack aircraft.
Yep. It was a carrier-based plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, it definitely is. It definitely was a good one. I saw Argentine pilot. I think it was Captain Garcia. I think that was his name. He's on YouTube, and he's talking about the Falklands War, and he was one of the pilots that was banging on the Invincible. Tore that out the frame. Said said when they hit the ship, they weren't looking to really kill people. What they were looking to do was sink the ship, so people could get off. The name of the game was to incapacitate the ship. Now they weren't really killing anyone. Right. And he spoke very openly about that. Pretty sharp. Anyway,
at 40 miles from what would be the target, according to the coordinates given, the Super Internards lifted for the first time, made a radar sweep and went down. At 30 miles, did the same, and at 20, the launch should occur. When they get up, I look to the left to see the launch. I thought that the missile was coming out of the pylon, but it fell down. When I saw that the missile was falling, I thought it had failed, but then its engine started. In this moment, their leader said, in front is the aircraft carrier, turn left and return to Rio Grande. We follow the trail. We start to converge, and the missile disappeared in a moment. It got lost in the horizon. And in the same place where the missile was lost, a few seconds later, the silhouette of a very large ship appeared. Unlike all the silhouettes we had studied, and the clearest was the asymmetry. The ship was in the same direction we were flying, and it was totally asymmetric. The flight deck gave me a disruptive vision. I was clearly looking at an aircraft carrier. I clearly saw the flight deck and the island where all the antennas and the bridge were. As we approached, the two columns of the black smoke began to emerge on both sides, as if screwed came from both sides. More and more smoke began to settle in the area of the aircraft carrier and began to cover the lower part of her. As I got closer, I started to see her only from the flight deck upwards. In this moment, I started to feel hot air. I started to feel the mass very hot, and I thought I had to put more cold air. But this meant that I had to take the hand from the accelerator and grab the stick with the left and with the right hand and move the command of the air. I sent the command to both hands and neither responded. The left sprayed on the accelerator and the right on the stick. I stuck close to the water. Since I saw the aircraft carrier, I forgot the rest of the world. I had what is called target fascination. I experienced it exactly as the manual says, as if two earmuffs began to close, and the only thing that existed for me was the ship. Until about 10 kilometers away, I felt an explosion that I knew was not from my plane. I looked to the left and saw an A4 that was exploding. A wing broke, showed the belly, and crashed on the water. Everyone was to my left. I was on the right. I did not know who it was. I looked forward again, back to the ship. And when I was about to start shooting with the guns, I wanted to start shooting the guns from afar because on May 25th, when I entered San Carlos and entered the shooting with guns, I felt invulnerable. I felt that nothing was going to happen to me. They were firing at us. The explosive ammunition was visible. And when I was about to start firing, I felt another explosion, much stronger inside the cabin. I felt it as when you let out the gas for a while and then throw a phosphorus pressure and depression. This is so poorly written. It's the same sensation because it's not even noise. I looked to my left and saw at between 5 and 10 meters, another A4 that exploded. And the image I have was in A4 twice as long and twice as fast, with the same shape of an A4, but with all the sheets separated in between sheet and sheet, all orange. This is so poorly written. This is hard to read. Let me just finish it up. When I passed the bow on the aircraft, I started to make turns with the high load factor, right and left, for a long time, trying to prevent or from being hit. So basically, they had the opportunity to take this thing out and they did not. Okay. This was a big problem for this was the turning point for the Argentine military. For whatever reason, like this guy said, he had target fixation. He was fascinated and didn't make a proper decision. This is the turning point of the war. Had they sank the HMS Invincible, it would have been game over.
Yeah,
Really game over, because they sank everything else.
Yeah, you see all those jets on the flight deck.
Well, they wouldn't have been able to get those jets off anyways. These jets, these are Harrier jets anyways. These are Harrier.
Yeah, the Harrier jump jets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But had they knocked the Invincible out, that would have knocked out, basically, how would you say, 2/3 of their fleet's power. That would have knocked them right out of there. And then it would have been more of a land-based kind of conflict, where I think the Brits might have had the Argentines, but if they had totally taken control not only of the skies but of the sea, they would have greatly hurt the they would have greatly hurt them, because they hit the Sheffield, and that did a lot of damage. It took the Brits a bit to recover from that. But the Argentines just didn't have the ground game together. The ground game was hot garbage, and they just didn't have it on the ground. They just didn't have it. But had they taken out the Invincible, I think that would have definitely, like Mike said, I think that would have, without question.
Oh yeah, because they would have had no close air support for their troops.
Yeah, that was 2/3. That would have been 2/3 of their force.
Yeah.
Right there. Right there alone.
Brazil was actually supposed to get involved inside the war, and they passed, and they actually backed out at the last moment. So they were relying on Brazil to add the second punch into the British.
Right.
The Americans, they called Reagan at the time, and Reagan said, "I'm sorry, but we're not home." So
yeah, that's right, exactly. I remember the war very well. I remember it was on TV, and I remember we were looking at this thing really close, and when we saw the Sheffield get hit by the Exocet missile, we were like, "Oh shit! Look like the Brits getting ready to take a dump on this one. Look like they're getting ready to go down," because that was huge. They didn't expect that to happen, and Argentina actually was making they were taking advantage at that point in time. They were taking advantage, but they couldn't. They couldn't. You know, in any war, you have to be able to maintain momentum.
The Argentines fought that war the wrong way.
They should did. They should.
They should have taken out the Navy, especially the carrier. Don't
Yeah.
worry about the islands.
Had they gotten that first,
just taking out the carrier. Carrier is a command ship in the area.
Had they gotten that first, because they wouldn't have been able to feed the islands.
Exactly.
That was the key.
No command, no war. Period.
yeah,
The British would have to come back home and regroup. And by the time they had come back home and regroup, British didn't have that much of a war. I mean, British Army and Navy is almost like Barbados, you know. I hate to say it.
say that again, E.
The British Army and Navy are like almost like Barbados. I mean,
Yeah, well, Barbados.
They've got a couple of submarines now, and that's about it.
Yeah, the thing is, this proved that that a superpower can be taken down. I don't care what the Queen says and
That's
how much
exactly
they have. They can be taken down. But don't forget that when Cuba went to Africa,
who did they knock out the box? Who did the Cubans knock out? Cubans knocked a lot of.
Well, but first, the main is that they knocked out the apartheid military.
They knocked them out cold. They knocked them out cold and did some real ill crap. Because I remember watching some of this stuff, and we saw some kind of terrible film where they came in there. They knocked out. This is how bad it was.
Mm-hmm.
They knocked out some South African Boers. They knocked their asses out the box, cleaned them, and then when they betrayed their bodies, they unzipped their pants and took out their Johnsons to get exposed in the sun, so it looked like they were getting hard-ons. That's how ill they got with them dudes.
Mm-hmm.
It was fucking. That's crazy. Ill. That's how live they got on. So Cuba was a small superpower. They were knocking out major powers there. And England and some of these other guys were trying to back these guys up with some of their military attaché, and they got beaten. And they didn't want to talk about that. That's why Cuba was walking around talking smack, because them dudes could fight. They were very good. That's why they got very nervous about them coming into Jamaica and all that, because they knew what was getting ready to go down if they got up in there.
Well,
go ahead, Mike.
Well, they had American military hardware at the time. They didn't have British hardware. They had American military hardware. And those what were they using at the time? The F4s.
Yeah, the Phantoms.
Yeah, they had the F4s, and the Cubans had the MiG-21s. And
that's right.
They ripped those F4s out of the sky like it was nothing.
Well, that's why they got rid of the F4s, because during Vietnam, the F4s were getting knocked out the box by the 21s. They were getting knocked out the box. It was a 1v1. In fact, we were losing. Then they came with supposed to be fighter weapons school and everything else like that, which I think helped. But that's when they got off the F4 and they started to move with some of the newer aircraft that we had, the naval aircraft with the F-14, and then of course we came in there with the the F-15 and so forth was supposed to be air superiority aircraft that we ultimately began to deploy coming towards the end of that war, and that turned a lot of things around. But yeah, the F-4 was getting lit the freak up. We're getting lit up, man. We're getting lit up. I mean, so yeah, the Cubans were tough. You never want to give the Cubans credit because it's a small island, supposed to be communist, but those guys had a huge effect in the 20th century on
100%.
On many countries. They a massive effect, a tiny superpower in certain respects, and they were bloodying a lot of noses, bloodying a lot of big fat.
Practically liberated Africa.
They absolutely did. They absolutely did. From Angola on down.
Yep.
Absolutely did. Absolutely. No question about it. Very influential. One of the small, very small, but one of the most influential nations in the 20th century, especially the latter half.
In that area, in the 60s, and yeah, definitely in that era. They did stuff in the Caribbean as well, with in Grenada. That's the reason why America invaded Grenada, because of the incidents with Maurice Bishop, who went to Cuba.
That's right.
And
That's exactly
got a lot of studying, and they had their own little, which is not spoken about, their own little thing going on there, the New Deal movement.
That's exactly.
Yeah, and that was a problem for America, because it was the spread of communism, and so like Nagoni is saying, they had a huge influence on, basically, when people talk about revolution, they talk about the 60s. A lot of it's to do with, what the communists were doing in Cuba, and Mao Zedong with his Little Red Book, and the influence that had on people's minds, in the Caribbean and in Africa.
Yeah,
but very much so. Yeah. Castro and that crew, they were very, very, very effective.
Mm-hmm.
Very effective. That's why they don't want to talk about it. They were
bloody and big
fat noses.
I always wanted to go to Cuba before, in the Castro era. People still talk about it now, but I'm sure it's not the same as it was. But
it's very urbanized now. It's very urbanized now. But the point that I was making about Cuba going into Africa was that when you have an adversary that's determined, there's a high probability you're going to lose. And we covered this some months ago, but there's a general within the U.S. military who fought in Vietnam, and he, by 1999, he was, one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He did a tabletop exercise with the U.S. military against Iran, and red team versus blue team. In all the tabletop exercises, the U.S. loses 25,000 soldiers from the Fifth Fleet within 72 hours. And what he's saying is that if the United States decides that they're going to go into Iran, there's a high probability you may lose going in.
The asymmetric warfare that Iran, that's their strength, going into there is going to be a huge problem for the United States. Very, very unwise. The same with Israel, and they know this. Not a smart move. Not smart.
Yeah, but also battle with this. Shout out to you, Mike. But also another thing you guys are not also keeping in mind is that when it comes to the Middle East in general, most of the terrain is mainly like rock and desert. So the United States, yes, they may have a technological advantage, but when you're fighting nations like the Lebanon, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, right? These are countries in which you're gonna have to put soldiers on the ground. And
you're talking about the confirmation of the ground, and
and also on top of that, look, when you go into a lot of these Arab regions, the Middle East, they may have their own conflicts with each other, but they operate as a group. In terms of, there are so many different militias that are fighting each other, and I'm telling you right now, if the U.S. was to attack sort of Iran, you're gonna start seeing a lot of these militias, the Iraqi militias, the Iranian militias, they're gonna start coming together and attacking U.S. soldiers. We just saw a couple of, I think, months ago how, Iraq voted to kick, I think, the U.S. troops out of Iraq. So when push comes to shove, they're gonna choose their neighbor over this sort of overarching U.S. that just coming out of nowhere. So,
absolutely, that's absolutely a given. Not to say that we all know that, but that's an absolute fact as far as what you're bringing up. Yeah. Not a very smart move for us to go in there and play that type of game as of right now. And they're prepared for you, even though they're saying that you're not. But I believe that Iran has been preparing for this for a while, and I don't think it's a very. I don't think it's.
And Brett,
DE, are you there?
I think DE's away right now.
Yeah, bro, I'm here. I was listening to what the brother said.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Look, the war that they fought against Iraq will be a different war than what they fought against Iran. They can't fight
You can
that
drop me off
same
here.
war. They have to fight more of a standoff. We're gonna
Thank you.
shoot some missiles in and destroy the infrastructure, but no boots on the ground. Serious.
At the
I'm
end-
not sure the America has an appetite for boots on the ground. I think more and often nowadays they don't really want to get into a messy situation where they're going to get a lot of deaths. I think everything about the way the US handles itself nowadays is angled so it doesn't have to get messy, you know?
Yeah,
And-
yeah,
The last war that the US fought actually is Iraq.
yeah.
That's
And
the
then
last
and they
war. There
failed.
won't be any more wars
And
on
people
that
people
field.
didn't
You know,
exactly.
it'd be a Grenada or a little island
No,
somewhere.
It's not gonna be like that.
No,
I mean,
not even
people
in Venezuela. You can see they don't want boots on the ground.
No, it's all airstrikes.
look at the Battle of Fallujah. A lot of people want to talk about the Battle of Fallujah. You know, even though the Iraqis made some key mistakes, they totally shut down the tank attack. You know, they just let these guys run these big heavy tanks right into the sand, and these guys got stuck in the sand. And next thing you know, here they are supposed to be fighting these jacked up Iraqis, and they were in a pitched battle for their survival. So
Yeah.
Listen,
Yeah,
tanks are metal coffins. That's what they are.
yeah, I mean, and they sank into the sand. They said, okay, come in here. Came running in, and next thing you know, the tanks started sinking in the sand.
And that's what I'm saying.
Sinking in the
Look,
sand.
The same,
look.
but IED attacks really put
Oh
decimated.
yeah, oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but
well-
see, that's what I'm saying. Look, the same reason the U.S. cannot easily go into Iraq or the Middle East is the same reason why many people have failed to conquer Russia, from Napoleon to Hitler. When you look at Russia as a country, it's entirely ISIS. No, it will take 20 million soldiers to occupy that region.
They had at least four invasions on them.
Yeah.
Four invasions.
In other words, Russia benefits from the geography. The geography makes it almost impossible for them to be conquered. The same with the Middle East.
Also, a lot of people. They had a lot of people and a lot of resources to fight. They had a lot of So that's true.
They have a great advantage. It's the same thing for the Middle East. Like these people live in a place. Like I said, they live in the desert. I'm like, how are you gonna fight a group of people who grew up in the desert? They know the terrain. They know all the traps. I'm like, you can bring all your military warfare, but let's be honest, American soldiers are not built for that kind of battle.
And those guys are so well suited for that. I saw one of these Afghan fighters, standing next to like this rocky formation. The motherfucker looked like the rocks itself. I was like,
yes,
he looked like a bunch of rocks. I was like, holy shit. I mean, the guy looked like some Afghani rocks. I was like, what the fuck? I said, how we gonna go and fight these dudes and they look like rocks and shit?
Think about how
these
long.
guys can hide from you they're standing right in front of you. It's crazy.
Think about how long Afghanistan has been a nation state of war, going back to 79, 80 when the Russians first invaded. Remember the first time?
Yep.
And the Mujahideen came in there, and along with the Afghani army or whatever. And what happened? The Russians decided to pull out, right?
Hey, there's only one army has ever taken Afghanistan.
Who?
And anybody know who that army is?
No.
Genghis Khan?
The Great Khan.
Yeah, Genghis Khan. Yeah, the Genghis Khan.
The Great Khan, man.
Yeah.
Are you serious? Wow, that's crazy.
Man.
Oh,
Well, I know my history now. I'm surgical with that shit. I'm surgical with that bitch.
Let me ask the panel a quick question, right? So, just like since we all know how the United States epically failed when it came to the Iraq War, is it fair to say that and now we currently live in a time in which the United States cannot threaten people as much as they used to militarily, because they understand that with Russia and China over there willing to back their opposition, that they may not be able to do what they were able to do in the past when it came to the Vietnam War.
You see, you bring up a great point. You see, the enemy knows that if you're going to try to fight this big, giant battle of attrition and put a lot of tanks and a lot of troops and a lot of air, the way we fought the Second World War, we're going to have advantage there. Where we don't have advantage is fighting these asymmetric guerrilla type of warfare, using the confirmation of the ground really well, using the art of indirect attack and so forth, and taking a big force, slowing it down, chipping away at it, making each little area of defend for itself, and then slowing it down and then just slowly bleeding it away. That's how you fight these types of big, giant, cumbersome, front heavy armies. And that's what really, we're still geared on that World War II bullshit.
But you know what though?
That's over. Vietnam showed you that. We saw very much the same thing in Iraq. I mean, we're seeing Afghanistan. They're fighting us beautifully because we trained them, and some of the same guys that we trained to fight the Russians are using the same tactics they're using to fight us, and they know how to fight us. That's why we have them come to. They know how to fight us. They know exactly how to do it. So these guys know how to do this now.
Yeah, I'm surprised they're not using more of those weaponized drones they got, because they got a whole lot of them.
But you got to figure there's some counters to those drones as well. So,
well, of course, there's going to be. But you're talking about areas like Afghanistan and Iraq, though. The drones can come in handy.
I'm telling you, maybe they can, but you got them rock looking like motherfuckers running around up in there.
The drones are not. You can only fight for so long from the sky.
Exactly, man.
Well, that's true too. Yeah. That's true too. Yeah.
You think
drones can't see? Drones can't distinguish between a civilian and a fighter.
Yeah,
the drone is going to think that everybody, the guy who's operating the drone, has to look at everybody as combatant.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
that's true too.
They know how to fight us. So that's why I'm saying, some of this, if you want to go to war with China and you're going to look into some big areas and you're going to drive over, the Chinese steppes somewhere and invade in some big area where you can use a lot of tanks, a lot of aircraft and all that kind of stuff. We're better geared for that type of fighting, but the type of
not
wars.
Really. I'm like, look. Even when it comes to the Chinese and even India, a lot of these regions, like, yes, there are many parts of China where they could pull that off, but there are also many areas of China where they're gonna have to use a lot of ground game. I'm like, we gotta understand that even when it comes to Asia, look, we're also fighting against countries that have.
It's true because we saw it in Korea. We saw it in Korea.
And they have a billion. They have a billion.
We came to the Yellow River.
They also have a billion people. They have the manpower to overpower us at any point.
Yeah, they have a lot. They have a heavy resource.
Yeah,
and they had it then. They had it then because they came at us with wave tactics back then. They came at us with wave tactics. That's where the whole term "bug out" and all that shit came from.
Yeah.
We saw people, guys. They just kept coming.
What? Yeah. Wait, say, bro. Wait, say.
Asia is such a large continent, man.
That's what I'm saying.
Man. I mean,
it's huge.
If you're gonna attack that, you need partners. You hear me? You need partners who about it, and NATO ain't gonna do it. You hear me?
That's what I'm saying.
The thing is, you can try to bomb China all you want to. That's just not. It's not going to work. If you can't occupy the land, it's just not.
It's too big. That's what I'm saying. A lot of these regions are way too big, like China and Russia.
Plus, you'll swallow yourself into it.
Exactly. Right.
You're not going to be able to get out of that.
And they can throw a lot of resource at you.
Yep.
And you know what though? And China and Russia right now, they're reconstructing the old Silk Road.
Oh, that's true, bro. That's true.
All right, let me get to this next item on the docket from Al Jazeera.com. Racism row as French doctors suggest virus vaccine tests in Africa. Two doctors sparked criticism for discussing in a TV show the idea of testing a vaccine for the coronavirus in Africa. Two French doctors have been accused of racism for suggesting that a potential vaccine for coronavirus should be tested on people in Africa. The comments were made on the French television channel LCI during a discussion on Wednesday about COVID-19 trials set to be launched in Europe and Australia to see if the BCG tuberculosis vaccine could be used to treat the virus. It may be provocative. Should we not do this study in Africa where there are no masks, no treatment, or intensive care? A little bit like it's been done for certain age studies, where among prostitutes, we try things because we know that they are highly exposed and don't protect themselves, said Jean-Paul Muir, head of intensive care unit at the Cochin Hospital in Paris.
Yeah, Mike, this is what we were speaking about earlier. You
Yeah,
know?
let me finish this. Camille Locke, research director at France's National Health Institute in CERN, agreed. You are right. And by the way, we are thinking of in parallel about a study in Africa using this same approach. It did not take long for a backlash to begin on social media. Africa is in a testing lab. Ivorian professional football player Didier Drogba, who used to play for Chelsea, wrote on Twitter, "I would like to vividly denounce those demeaning, false, and most of all, deeply racist words." Olivier Faure of France's Socialist Party said the remarks were hardly provocation. Sorry. It's not provocation, it's just racism, he wrote on Twitter. Africa is not the laboratory of Europe. Africans are not rats. The anti-racism group SOS Racine called on France's media regulator, the Council Superieur de CSA, to formally condemn the remarks. The group issued a statement saying, "No Africans are guinea pigs," adding that comparison with AIDS and prostitutes was problematic and unwelcome. The organization said the CSA had not responded to their complaint. It's scandalous to see that not a single regulatory authority has come out publicly to denounce these statements. Amir Thorne, a member of the SOS Racine, told Al Jazeera. Meanwhile, Le Club des Avocats, a Moroccan lawyers collective, said it was suing Jean-Paul Muir for racial defamation. So I'm just gonna really kind of summarize this real quick. So this is a slippery slope, because they're right that Africa does not have enough PPE available. And so what do you do?
Not do tests on them. That's what we don't do. I'm like, look, let's be honest, okay? First of all, now you guys already know how.
Can I finish my summary?
Oh, sorry, bro. I'm sorry.
So what do you do in that predicament? Because what's happening now is that the 800 million people in sub-Saharan Africa are not going to get any equipment anytime soon. They're just not going to have it unless they start producing their own. So you're going to have to figure out some testing available. Now, are the African scientific research labs doing this type of stuff? I don't know. I know when I was over there, the only people who had masks were people who were government officials. If you weren't a government official, you didn't have a mask. So what are they supposed to do at this point? I think testing Africans first does make a lot more sense, because if it gets there, you don't have the infrastructure available to actually deal with it. I would prefer that they do test them first, so that they can determine whether or not whatever vaccine that they're trying to come up with is not effective on the continent. But I also had this discussion when we were over there at the event, that these sort of it's kind of open source, or no sort of governance policy in terms of how Africans are tested by external powers. And so they're extracting a lot of DNA and whatnot from Africans, but there's no real way to trace who's being tested. Okay. And so I agree that it would be racist on the surface to say, yeah, let's test these Africans first. But on the other hand, you need to be able to determine which vaccine is going to work for Africans in the event that the pandemic spreads throughout the continent. Because it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. Go ahead, Henry.
Yeah, and bro, I get what you're saying. Look, my parents were West African. I was born in Africa. I grew up here, so I guess I'm more of I'm like a Killmonger type of nigga. You know what I'm saying, both sides. But let's be honest here, bro. Okay, there is a reason why Africans react the way they did. There has been so many situations in the past where you've had European companies come out to Africa and say, "Oh, we want to help Africans with malaria. We want to help Africans with HIV." Right? And they'll give you medications, give you all these different things, just for us to find out years later, oh, this medication and that, cause this disease. This does that. In fact, I think like a couple of 3 years ago, there was this report that came out that apparently some of the medications that a lot of Africans were receiving for malaria or HIV actually was sterilizing them. And you had, and you had even Israel, their medications they were sent to Africa was sterilizing them. So there's a reason why there's this reaction. It's not because, oh, we're just going to try to come. No, there's been a long history of quote unquote Europeans going down, or European companies, big pharma. Like now, we all know in the United States how big pharma attacks Americans. Well, a lot of these European big pharma, a lot of times they also will test Africans, and a lot of times what we've seen in the past, they'll go down there, they'll give medications, give all these different things, and then we found out a couple of years ago, oh shit, we're being fucked. Oh shit, it's sterilizing women. Oh shit, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? And here's one thing, right? It's funny how, here's one thing, look, I get the perspective, but why didn't he say let's go and try on the Chinese first? Because that's where these originated from, right? That's where it came out. Why didn't he say let's go try on the Italians where it's getting the most deaths? Why? Because he understands if he did that shit, he could actually get checked. See, let's be honest here. The reason why he said let's go do the Africans because Africans don't really have that kind of power on the world stage. So he knows he can get away with those comments. But I bet you for a fact, even if right now China still had the #1 cases, he wouldn't have said let's go try on the Chinese because he understands what the backlash would be. So let's keep it a buck. And look, I'm not trying to attack anybody. I'm not trying to say that the going's wrong or anything. I'm just trying to say there is a reason why everybody is reacting the way you're reacting, especially Africans, because we know what's been going on for a very long time. See, a lot of people on the outside, all they see these words. There's a long history of this, and we also know that if it was any other demographic, he wouldn't be saying this. So my thing is this, he can't. Here's the thing. Look, what also amazes me is that what he said did not even get any condemnation from the French government or the French people there. It's like it was only him who apologized, and that tells me everything I need to know. Because I'm like, you guys are very intelligent brothers. So I don't have to sit here and talk to you about how French is one of the worst colonizers ever, how just what they do in Africa. So I'm not even gonna explain that. But all I'm trying to say is that there's a reason. Yes, what he said may seem harmless, but there's been a long history. The same thing you guys see. Example, right? We see with Ethiopia. The same way big pharma works here, it's worse in Africa when it comes to Europeans. But yeah, that's. And
Breaking up.
Yeah, he's breaking up.
Breaking up.
Yeah, what's up?
But I mean,
Yeah.
I can't argue against him completely. He's got some good points, and I would think that if you're going to try an experimental vaccine, you wouldn't want to do it in areas that are most severely, how can I say, most severely affected.
yeah, that's the thing.
By COVID-19 first to see what actually happens. See if the vaccine is actually going to be effective and if it's going to work. And then you go to countries where they don't have the labs and all that type of stuff, and then you offer it to them. You don't mandate it to them. You offer it to them, and see what the government leaders and the scientists and the medical professionals say over there. Whether they.
I'm in agreement with that as well. I think that the point you made and the point Hammer made is very valid. Mike, you have to, I hear what you're saying, Mike, but if you look the history and the record of the vaccination testing in Africa is not, it's not been very good. You know, so if we look at the context of that and think about what Bill Gates is saying, however many
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
billions of money he wants to spend on it, I mean, I'm suspicious. Why all of a sudden, why is COVID-19 in Africa more important than COVID-19 in Europe or in New
Because
York?
and let me answer the question.
Is it?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the reason why it's so important, I'm gonna give you a secret. Africa is the next emerging market. That's what's going on. Okay. The reason why you saw China rush so much to go to Africa is because they started to see early signs saying, "Oh shit, these people are about to reach a billion, just like the Chinese and Indians, right? This region we're starting to see some movement here and there, right? Now, China, remember, it was only like a 30, 40-year period where they were able to develop completely. So they knew, okay, 30 or 40 years ago, we were like same way as Africa. We were very poor, right? And we've got to some development, and here we are. And we're seeing in Africa the population going up. We're seeing some signs. Let's go there and plant the seeds, because we know that in a couple of 20, 30 years, sub-Saharan Africa could be the next sort of economic market. You got India going there. You got Europe going. That's the reason why they chose sub-Saharan Africa to be one of the main destinations for the BLT, the Belt and Road Initiative, which is the quote unquote like the in other words, they're trying to recreate the Silk Road. They're trying to recreate that trade route. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you mean BRI, not BLT. That's bacon, lettuce, and tomatoes.
Come on. Sorry. Yeah. Belt and Road Initiative. Yeah. Sorry. Belt and Road Initiative, right? But in other words, they're trying to recreate the Chinese Silk Road and that economic route. And for them, they understand that, okay, when it comes to the Europeans, the is going closer to recession. India is a rising market. China is a rising market. They've already entirely developed to some extent. China's already developed. And what they're seeing, okay, look, Africa is going through the same process India and China went through. They're going to that $1 billion mark in terms of a population. We're seeing potential there. That's the reason why you keep seeing them forgiving loans. I'm like, there's been so many stories that I've been seeing how the loan did, like Gabon, the loan of country like Gabon, this much money, and then you'll have Europeans say, oh, they're just trying to put Africans in debt, and they'll forgive the loans. And the reason why they keep doing this is because in their minds, what they want a lot of these African countries to be trading partners that they can leverage against the United States and Europe. See, when Donald Trump went and filed those quote unquote tariffs on China, he fucked up, because the Chinese were debating whether, okay, should we abandon our strategy for Europe and just go for other countries to sort of strengthen our ties against the United States? Because right now we'll sort of compete with the US for the European market. And they said, okay, what should we do? Then all of a sudden Trump comes with a tariff, and they say, okay, you know what? In order to protect ourselves in the future from a white dude in the White House who wants to go crazy, we're going to start building sort of economic partners in Africa, because they are reaching that $1 billion population. If we help them develop, then they could become a market we could sort of rely on, so that if this ever happens again, if Europe does go through that recession everybody's predicting, if America does go to that downturn everybody's predicting, as China, we'll have a market to rely on. That's the reason why they've sort of beat everybody to the punch. Now you got Russia coming in for the military support. You got Putin saying, oh shit, Xi Jinping is down there, he's doing shit. Hey, as Putin, I need to go down there and start putting the Russian footprint there too. So you got what? Putin making the first ever African-Russian summit. He brings them up. So China is providing the quote-unquote economic support. Russia is providing the military support. You got what? You got Rwanda. I think it was Nigeria buying the first ever. I think it was one of the African countries which bought the first ever quote-unquote nuclear plant from Russia. So they're already providing them even nuclear technology to some extent, or the groundwork for that. So my thing is this, the reason why look, my thing is this, you know, when it comes to all these talks about, you know, the colonizers, the Western, the reason why you're seeing Europe right now going back to Africa, because I don't know if you guys know this, but a couple of months ago,
10 seconds.
you know,
10 seconds, Hammer.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. I'll just finish off by saying this. Yeah, sometimes it can be very long with it. But one thing I'll say is this: the reason why you're seeing Europeans going back to Africa is because they understand they sort of got beat. They understand that the game is changing. Africa is becoming the new market. You know, they let China run right through their hands. China was not supposed to happen, and now the Chinese beat them again to Africa. So now they understand that if they're not able to get a piece of the pie now in terms of this new emerging market, this is why you're seeing Europeans going to Africa right now trying to make this new trade deals or that shit. They understand if we don't get at least a piece of the pie now, we're gonna be fucked. I'll leave it at that. So,
all right, let me get to this next item on the docket from CNBC.com. In Africa's largest slum, a grassroots movement is spearheading the fight against coronavirus. Around 4 miles southwest of the center of Nairobi, residents in Africa's largest slum, the sprawling, densely populated informal settlement of Kibera, are bracing for the coronavirus pandemic. Around 60% of Kenyan capital's 4.4 million inhabitants live in 200 high-density informal settlements like Kibera, which account for around 6% of the city's total land area. African leaders, scientists, and the World Health Organization have voiced concern over the potential damage the virus could inflict if allowed to spread to such areas, which are home to nearly 43% of the continent's population. But in Kibera, a homegrown grassroots movement is mobilizing to improve education, sanitation, and healthcare provisions while calling on governments in Kenya and beyond to prioritize, finance, and adapt interventions in the continent's poorest communities. Kennedy Odi, who grew up in Kibera and founded Shining Hope for Communities in 2004, told CNBC that poor sanitation, a lack of clean water, and harsh living conditions meant hand washing and social distancing were not as readily available. The average home measures 12 feet by 12 feet, built with mud walls, a corrugated tin roof, and dirt or concrete floor. These usually house around 8 to 10 people, mostly sleeping on the floor. There's a lot of malaria. There's a lot of TB. If this thing hits anywhere like this, it is going to be a fire, Odi told CNBC via telephone from Nairobi. Shofco has set up hand washing stations with clean water tanks, going door to door, promoting awareness, engaging community and religious leaders, operating a health clinic, and working with the Ministry of Health to conduct screening tests. Why not give these people gloves? Odi suggested that the coronavirus was an equalizer in forcing the government to acknowledge that the areas like Kibera could no longer be ignored by the system. They know very well that the cooks from the slum, the nannies come from the slum, the security guards come from the slum, so now they are looking for ideas, he said. Many Kibera residents, Odi explained, did not intentionally perceive the coronavirus to be a threat since they had not directly seen for themselves the death and devastation it has wrought across the globe. It is a message for the government, but before people start fleeing or start feeling it by seeing death. Right now, they should provide those sanitation measures and make sure people have clean water. Otherwise, there will be no solution. By working on the ground with organizations like Shofco, he hopes that the government will realize that the best preventative measure in Kibera and similar communities is engagement and provisions, not police and guns. The Kenyan government has introduced a dusk to dawn curfew in a bid to curtail the spread of the virus, with just 142 cases confirmed nationwide as of Monday morning. However, instances of police brutality have drawn ire from rights groups such as Amnesty International. A 13-year-old boy was shot and killed by police in the market area of northeastern Nairobi early this week. abuse of civilians by police and military personnel has also been reported in neighboring Uganda and further afield. So, I mean, I think, and I talked about this before, we talked about this many times before, that there's a lot of opportunity for what we call social enterprises, okay? The ability to create a sanitation system, a sort of stationary or portable sanitation system would actually help in a situation like this. When I was from Rwanda in February, they had this set up already in the city. So to say that it can't be done is a bit of a misnomer. It can actually be done. There's a lot of opportunity to create systems through technology to fight against these sort of pandemics in areas like this that are highly densely populated. So start thinking from the top of your, from the back of your head. If I was in a situation like this from a first world perspective, how would I solve a third world problem like this, right? Lack of sanitation and things of that nature. These are big problems that they have. They just don't have the infrastructure to do it in these areas. It's not to say that the government is cheap or poor. It's a matter of infrastructure. Infrastructure takes time to develop. America was not built overnight, like some people would like to, have to believe that somehow, some way, that from New York all the way down to Southern California, that they had this big rail system and it was always here even before the Europeans got here. It's a joke. That thing took 100 years to build.
Yeah.
Not only 100 years to build, but they had free labor to build it. And where in Africa you're going to find that free labor? I mean, I don't like arguing with people like this because these so-called ADOS people, I leave them alone. I stopped engaging them. It's just,
listen, all those
even though they lived it, they still don't want to say, you know what? Well, Africa didn't have what we have. We provided that free labor for 200 years before anybody thought of us of anything else than a machine.
I got to get a brother that. Because the Chinese built railroads primarily. And then when railroads were built, they start kicking the Chinese out. Chinese Exclusionary Act. Kick the Chinese out. And the Africans, the ones who had the skills and the sciences, Benjamin Banneker comes to mind. The designer of the White House, its buildings and everything like that. But no white folks who did that.
Yeah, imagine, see, that's one of the reasons why I traveled to Africa this year, and I put it as a goal for me to go there every single month of the year until the end of the year, okay? But, this stupid pandemic has prevented me from achieving this goal. But I wanted to see for myself what kind of social solutions can be provided on the ground from an infrastructure standpoint, what we call micro infrastructure, those water sanitation jugs that they had out there. Is this one solution, but how do you distribute that on every single city corner? And how do you manage the supply aspect of it? What we call Internet of Things, how you measure the water through a scale that then sends out an SMS message through WhatsApp to other sanitation workers that you need to come fill this bottle back up, or you need to fill this tub back up, and you also need to lay out more, more sanitation supplies and so on and so forth. You got to think broad. You got to think big when it comes to things like this. That was my goal for going to the continent, was to figure out a way to how to engage the government, as well as show up as a delegate, not as an NGO, but as a delegate on working on behalf of these African governments in terms of digital infrastructure, as well as other civil infrastructure from a micro infrastructure perspective. Go ahead.
Well, water desalination would be one solution as well. Keep that water flow going.
Yeah, there's a lot of civil engineering projects going on over there. That was one of the reasons why I even went over there. Someone invited me last year. Okay, it was a high-ranking member of parliament who had invited me last year, and I didn't get a chance to go last year, so I decided to go this year.
Right.
But, you know, these projects are on the table, and there's a lot of money that is awaiting for these projects to be taken over. And what's happening here is that the African governments would like to work with Black Americans, and particularly men. And what I see, and DE myself has talked about this and many others, a lot of Black Americans don't have themselves together to actually do business on that level.
Because I mean, you need sanitary products there too. I mean, like even stuff like hand sanitizer, alcohol, all that type of stuff that people can use to keep their bodies clean, and whatever they can use to keep their living spaces clean on the daily.
Yeah, but you need everything, not just hand sanitizer. You need everything from the little trash cans and stuff like that, sanitation from that perspective, sanitation pickup. There's just a whole lot of things that's missing in these areas that and that has not been addressed. Like the article says that this allows for opportunity to the government to actually engage the situation firsthand rather than to just ignore it. So that was my purpose for going over there, man. Unlike some people who want to go over there for women. So
well, that means you're going to need sanitation trucks to pick up the waste.
Well, they have sanitation trucks.
They have that.
It's not a matter of needing sanitation trucks. Africa has got those resources already. Is that you have, in the case of this article, you got 2.2 million people. I think there's about 5 or 6. There's about 3 of them the size of the slums, about the size of the one that Mike was talking about there in Kenya. Plus, I mean, almost every other country that I've been to in Africa has one of these things to some degree. They have the sanitation trucks, but they don't have a place like, say, a city in the United States. They build a city dump.
Yeah, they don't have a waste.
In Africa, they don't have a city dump per se. They might bring all the garbage to one place. People come and pick through it to take out what they want, and then they burn the rest. You have this dump that's burning 365, 24, 365.
Ooh, boy,
So,
I've seen that thing.
The other problem is that they need water. Water. No, they don't need water, but you need water where the people can use it.
A treatment system.
You need to bring up, like, when I was born in Barbados, right? And before people had water inside their house, there used to be this thing called a standpipe in the neighborhood. In each village, there must be 2 or 3 of them. And you go there with your 5-gallon bucket and bring water to your house. In these areas, the slums, they don't have these things. You know what I'm saying? If they would put these things in, then people can go and get clean water for all that. But you don't have these things. So the in a way it's there, but it's not there. You know
So DE is actually bringing up a very good point. That part in Kenya, there's 4.4 million people there. You're talking about somewhere half the size of New York. People living on top of each other. So the problem is, like DE is saying, they don't have a waste management system, nor do they have a septic system in place out there. And so you have to come up with an innovative solution that's going to address that issue, because you're not going to dig up the ground tomorrow. It's not going to happen.
No.
You don't have enough bulldozers. You don't have enough backhoes and experienced people. You don't have enough PVC piping and stuff like that. You just don't have that. You don't have that infrastructure readily available to you in that area. And even if you did, who's going to pay for it? The government's not going to write a check tomorrow for that. So you got to come up with innovative solutions for that.
Do you have sewage treatment plants in these areas?
No. There's no sanitation system set up out there for that. No, that's the issue, right?
Wow.
Many cities have sewers, have sewer systems per se.
Yeah, I mean,
But
you can go down south and see that there's poor white people living on top of broken septic tanks with sewage, raw sewage popping out of it. So
oh my, wow.
this is in the United States in 2020. This is happening.
Yep.
Poor white people in Alabama and Mississippi and Arkansas.
Oh yeah, and the Appalachian Mountains. Yeah.
Yeah. So the United States has its issues too. You know, a lot of
Oh,
Americans don't
indeed.
admit to that. You know, they'll just point to Africa and say these people are just poor. They live in mud huts. But the reason why they live in mud huts is because of the exploitation of their government.
Indeed. Yeah.
You know, Europeans and everybody else who can pay off these people to not do anything so they can get cheap labor and whatnot. It's a litany of issues that has nothing to do with the civilians on the ground. And I hate to see, you know, poor African and Caribbean, you know, civilians being attacked on social media for things that are outside their control.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, because I mean, if you don't have the infrastructure there, you know you can't press the government to you know to use that. I mean because it seems like to me that the governments have to be pressed to build up this infrastructure, and you know the quicker engineers can get there to start doing that, and let the government know that okay, we know that you need this. Okay, well, we got a blueprint for it. So, but you need, you know, you need civil engineers to do that, man, because you're talking about infrastructure.
Well, look, you really don't need civil engineers to do some of the things that need to be done.
No.
Like, see the water truck that's there?
Mhm.
If that water truck, if you had say you got an area that's 20 square miles, and you bring water truck to strategic areas,
Right.
then people can come and get their water, right? The other thing is now, if you bring a trash truck to strategic areas, people will bring their garbage there and it will get picked up.
Yeah.
So the neighborhood around them wouldn't have garbage thrown everywhere. The other thing is that if you had a sewage truck,
yeah,
you hand everybody a toilet similar to what you have on a boat.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
If you live in 10 people have this tank,
right,
and every 2 or 3 days the tanks get pumped out.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
See what I'm saying? And if I had the contract to do that, I can build a system like that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If you went to the government of Kenya and say, look, this is what I want to do in this place, and it's going to cost I don't know, 3 million, 5 million a year to do it. You know what? I'm going to make $1 million profit. I'm going to employ 1,000 people.
Local.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then this problem can be fixed. That easy. And it will relieve the system so that the government now can go ahead and put in that sewer system, put in that water system, put in electricity and all that they can't do at the moment.
Yeah, and those are the sort of contracts that are on the table right now. That's how I got invited to go over there, because they said they wanted to hear what I had to say, and then I gave them my opinion right off the top of my head within 30 seconds on some of the issues, and they said, you know, we'd like to hear you come back again. So
in other words, they have the
from
equipment.
the time I was going to Africa, those are the things I was looking at getting into.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, they have the equipment, but they need a plan on how to utilize it.
Yeah.
What you're saying?
Well, everybody has their own idea of how to address something. It's who has the best idea for the time being, right? So that's how they kind of weigh it out. But there's multiple ways of doing things like this. Most of these poor people don't have, you know, iPhones or anything like that. They just have a regular cell phone. So how do you deliver services to a regular cell phone that you do for an iPhone or an Android phone? These are the sort of solutions, sort of problems that they have, right? There's technology gaps, governance gaps, knowledge gaps, information gaps, and so on and so forth. You have to figure out a way to kind of put all this stuff on the table and outline it one by one that would allow for these gaps to be met, right? So that you close these gaps all the time. My solution to the Kenyan government when I was over there was you need to have more, what do you call it? City hall trucks So you take like a food truck, but it's a city hall truck, and it has the internet access and computers inside, and it goes down to these sort of slum villages, and it brings the city government to the people rather than the people leave from the village and go to the government itself, right? So you're addressing that gap, that governance gap that is constantly plaguing the people. That's why the article said, you know, this pandemic forces the government not to ignore the people anymore or the situation anymore on the ground, but to actually engage it. But how do you properly engage it? Well, you got to send those vehicles out that have the services, government services for them, because the people are not going to be able to leave their slum or their area and go straight down to the city hall or the state government office. This is not, no way. It's not practical. So.
Yeah. But I mean, practically speaking, though, do you have a team of people who are ready to go there to do that work or to help them do that work?
Yeah, I went over there. That's exactly what I went over there for. I just went to the summit. There's Black people, Black Americans were a minority over there, obviously, but you know, it was a handful of us, but we were actually sitting down talking like, hey, we can actually create a startup out of this. I actually got an email Monday from one of the women that I met over there. She said when this pandemic blows over, the curfew blows over, you know, we're gonna link up in DC and we're gonna do something. See,
right?
These are the sort of people I engage. I'm not one of these people on YouTube who just goes over there for vacation. I went over there for you know, on my diplomatic journey. So
yeah, you went over there to take care of business. I hear you.
If you got ideas, man, if you got ideas, you can use them in Africa. I mean, I hear all this joke, this I come to start making fun of these people nowadays. I hear all the foolishness already. And if you got ideas, you can go to Africa and make money. You don't have to actually relocate to Africa.
Yeah.
You can go there, you form partnerships with people, you find the right people to do the partnership with. You form partnerships and you employ the people, and sometimes you invest very small amount of your money. Because there are programs that, like Mike was talking, Uganda, not Uganda, Kenya. You know, there are programs that the government set up, and guess who is moving into those programs? Like you were talking about, the Russians. Russians are going there. The Chinese, the Indians are going there. The people from Israel, friggin' Israelis are going here.
Yeah, Israel is giving away their technology to the continent. That's how they get their way in. But see, we don't think like that over here, right? We think more about, you know, they love the American flag, you know, MAGA hats everywhere. You know, they're out there stomping for you know, the tangerine tyrant. They love this country so much. They love the culture so much. And then when you ask them what's the game plan, what's the solution, they say it's to love, you know, this flag. They love this flag. They treat it like a blanket. They wrap themselves around it. They snuggle with it. I don't have time for those people.
Those are the people who wait for what happened the other day. Trump had to come up and say, you know, those poor Black people, they're bearing the brunt of this COVID virus.
Yeah.
How did he know that? Somebody had to whisper that in his ear.
Yeah, indeed.
They're waiting for things like that, you know, and the so-called leaders of Black community are silent. I'm serious. I'm waiting for them to say something, and I don't hear them.
Nope.
You know what?
None of them.
See, if you're waiting for groups like the Congressional Black Caucus, and you're waiting for Black mayors and stuff like that in those cities, to be quite honest with you, the performance record is not all that great in those cities that their mayors are. Now, I'm not trying to diss anybody, but I'm saying the track record. If you look at the areas where these people have been mayors for a long time, Charles Rangel in New York, and other mayors in Chicago and other major cities, and you look at these cities, and these people have been mayors for a long time, for many terms, and I'm sorry, but to be truthful with you, in some of these areas, there's not a whole lot of progress being made, you know. And I mean, look at Flint. Look at Flint. Look at Flint, Michigan. Look at Detroit, Michigan right now.
Now
Detroit,
the black elite in Michigan, I mean, they all ought to be tried serious. There should be a court that, I mean, all these people are talking about what Caucasians doing to them, but this black elite in Detroit ought to be brought out and tried on the street.
listen, because in Flint, Michigan, for example, okay, you mean to tell me all the black folks that live in Flint, Michigan, living in Flint, Michigan since General Motors was in its heyday, they going to allow in the 21st century their water to be literally poisoned?
Well, it's not so much that they let, it's just a matter, it was infrastructure development. That's the issue. So it doesn't matter who was in the office, but it's just a matter of infrastructure. But see, these people would never talk about that here, right? They'll always just talk about how great America is, right? You know, we'll make it great again, right? You know, but they won't talk about all the lead pipes and stuff across America that was installed in the 1900s. You know, that, you know.
They won't talk about they changed the source of water that they were getting also in Flint. And that water was more polluted than the original source of water.
Yeah.
You know, when I saw that the colors of that water, are you kidding me?
Oh, it's urine color, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it was darker than that. And some of that stuff was light brown, man.
Yeah, people were bathing with it. They didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They didn't know. And from what I read in the articles about that when they first started talking about, you know, the poison water in Flint, they were talking about the mayors and whatnot, people in the legislature over there. They were talking about, hey, listen, they were trying to do shit on the cheap, what they were doing. That's why they changed the water source. Okay, but the thing about it is they need to change that infrastructure. They need to get the lead pipes out, because as long as you run water through those same lead pipes, the water is always going to be poisoned.
Yeah. All right. Let me end this now. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if you've not already done so. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust when those posts on the community tab. Doc in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with and for you to reference. Peace and shalom.